our world that you and I lived with, it really became. It's like Little House on the Prairie at the end when they blow the whole town up. It's a whole new town that we all which we could segue into your book right here. It's a perfect time. This is Dean Butler I'm talking to. I'm getting to know him, everybody. Thanks for watching. His book, Prairie Man, My Little House, Life and Beyond. I'll put links in the description down below. You'll see a link popping up above here. Look at my scared face. I don't even know why I put that picture on there. I look like so surprised, but I think
you look like you look quite the hipster there, man.
We have a conversation. You don't know me. I don't know you. I know you because I grew up with Little House on the Prairie, the most friendliest. Right. It was the Brady Bunch of the 70s to the 80s. It lasted with 74. What? How many? 74 to 80.
The Brady Bunch with wagons, with horses and wagons. You know,
but
going
down the rabbit hole, there's also a dark side of Little House on the Prairie. Very heavy subjects that you guys went through. We'll talk about all this because I need some good clips. Because here's the thing between you and me. The dirt, the clips, it'll sell the book because the goal is to sell the book. Get people to buy Dean's book. Welcome to Coffee Talk. Today we have in the hot seat actor, author Dean Butler. You know him as Almanzo Wilder from Little House on the Prairie. His new book out, Prairie Man, is out now. We're going to talk about his book, stories of your favorite TV show in mind. It all starts now. Fix your wigs, grab your mugs, and don't touch that dial.
I do not have a lot of dirt in this book. It's just not. Dirt is not my brand. It really isn't. I mean, look, there are certainly things I had to soften the book to get there. Things that I wrote that maybe, that were maybe a little stronger because they came out in a moment of needing to sort of share stuff. But I've really had to be and wanted to be conscious of the fact that people love this program for a very particular reason. And it's because it's a safe place. It's because, and look, I think people understand also that there is a dichotomy between what was going on camera and what was going on off camera. But what we were all there for, what that group of people who created this, their job was to make it work on camera. It was not their job to be everybody's best friend off camera. On camera, yes. Off camera, not necessarily. And I think that's something that, it takes a while when you're in that world to recognize that, we're in two different spaces here. There is the warm and fuzzy, fluffy part, which is beautifully crafted that the camera sees. And then there's a little bit more realistic, look, no one was horrible it wasn't horrible, but there certainly were tough moments that went on, but it was all geared towards making wonderful moments on camera. And I think, those wonderful moments on camera that people have been watching for 50 years. And it's important, it was important to me to nurture that. There's some, I'm telling some truth in the book about the way things were, but I also try and provide context and understanding of it. I'm not just, I'm not going to be a bomb thrower with this book. I think our fans would be surprised if we went that. And I think that they don't really want that. People love where Little House is concerned. People love the fantasy of it. There's an idyllic quality that Little House has that it's had from the beginning. And that quality has been maintained in people because the stories are so pure in their approach. I mean, look, you made the reference. There were tough subjects on Little House. We dealt with where Michael dealt with racism, anti-Semitism, obesity, drug abuse, disease, rape. I mean, there was a lot that went on in Little House. But what made Little House special or I think the reason people were able to deal with those subjects on Little House and why people watched those programs and felt safe watching them is that the characters dealt with those crisis moments in their lives with grace and dignity. And Michael, it was very important to Michael to have people have a strategy for dealing and coping that came out of love and forgiveness rather than retribution. And look, there was retribution. I mean, there was comedic retribution, certainly. And there's, I'm not going to be able to cite a specific episode where there was dark retribution. That just wasn't really a flavor in the program. Yeah. Comedically, yes, there was definitely comedically driven retribution. We saw that a lot with the Olsen family, with Nellie Olsen and Harriet Olsen, and they were the flies in the ointment in the Walnut Grove community. If there was a live-in troublemaker, the live-in antagonist, it was Mrs. Olsen and Nellie.
Nellie, this is for you.
And they got what was coming to them for the things that they did, which were, at times outrageous, and you sort of shake your head. How can someone do that or say that? But they did get what was coming to them. And that was very important. Michael wanted people to see that there were consequences for choices that we made. And there was grace and dignity in the acceptance of things that could happen to you, and you turned the other cheek. You were bigger than the things that were coming at you, because living in this world, there are always things that are coming at us. All of us are facing things every single day that feel like indignities. We feel like we're being treated unfairly. There are those things. It's how you cope with that is the difference maker in what makes a person a fully realized human being, is the way you cope with the things. The problems, everybody has the problems. Not everybody deals with them gracefully.
Here's a weird fact for the kids out there watching. I call them the kids because everybody watching, you guys are all beautiful. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. And I'm going to put a link. Check out Dean's book. Links will be right here, right above him, and in the description down below. Bonanza, Michael Landon was 22 when he first started filming that. And you were about 22, 23 when you came on Little House.
I had just turned 23 when 2 days before I started. Yeah.
So that's a little wild connection. So when you came on the set, and I want to know about Michael and meeting him for the first time, working with him. Did he ever go, "Hey kid, I was your age when I was on Bonanza"? Was he ever like that guy?
I don't think he had he was a wonderful storyteller. I mean, he loved sharing things, but Michael held court on his set. It wasn't like you were having conversations. It was you were gathered around Michael and he was sharing something. And look, I think that's the nature of the amount of, the reverence that people held him in, that people wanted to, when Michael wanted to talk, you wanted to listen, because there was always something interesting. There was a funny story. There would be, Michael told more off-color jokes than anybody. I mean, he had a wicked sense of humor, and there was really no place he wouldn't go with his humor, which at times was a little off-putting, but but the stories were funny. I mean, he was funny. You know, I was just the other day watching, Catherine, my wife, Catherine, turned on, had a clip that came up, and it was Michael's last appearance on The Tonight Show. And he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and was, you know, he'd been given an end date, approximately. You know, it was not going to be a long, I mean, from diagnosis to him being gone was 10 weeks. It was an incredible thing.
I just want to say one thing. And then, especially since that a tabloid would write 4 weeks left.
Thing that happened. But here he was on The Tonight Show in his last appearance, and I didn't see the date. I don't remember the date of when it was. But he was funny. He was telling stories. I mean, it was a little uncomfortable because he was really telling stories about his end, jokes about how he was going to be gone.
Yeah.
And it was a little uncomfortable to watch that. And yet you sort of, given who he was, you knew why he was doing it. He didn't want people feeling sorry for him. And I think he was very clear that he'd had a great, great life, and he'd done everything that he wanted to do creatively. He did more in his 54 years, and it's extraordinary to think that Michael passed at 54 years old. When you look at the output of what he did, it's extraordinary what he did and the lasting power that it's had in the consciousness of audiences. You know,
I mean, 54 is so young. It's so young.
Yeah, no, it's
now when you look at it.
What did you say? You're 56, 58?
Yeah, yeah, and I still feel like I'm
yeah.
10 years old. I remember yesterday like this. 54 is so young. He was here for this much time on the planet, and he did so much.
Yeah, he was. I mean, watching Michael, thinking back on it, I mean, no one worked harder than he did. And he, that old saying, burning the candle at both ends. Michael did burn the candle at both ends. I mean, there's no doubt he was living fully, and he lived hard. You know, he did it all. He worked hard. He played hard. He was an around the clock guy. We only all have so much time. And, what Michael did in 54 years, it might take someone else 80 years to do. Or if they could even approach that, he just had this urgency about his life. And I think, and adding to that, and why it was so effective is because he loved what he was doing. I mean, Michael loved being an actor. He loved being a director. He loved writing. He loved producing. Michael had a fascination for television, which was just, and an understanding of it that was just extraordinary. I think Michael probably could have chased a feature film career. I mean, he certainly had looks to work in feature films if he'd wanted to. I think he very deliberately chose television because he loved the work and he wanted to work all the time.
One thing I want to magazines about the fact that I want to have a 10th child so my wife will have some kids.
Michael is there. And it is really a powerful statement that television really makes you, creates a kind of eternal quality for people. And, you've said this earlier, but it's just, in my little career and all this, through Little House, I will live on, all of us will live on. And that is the gift. That's the gift in all of this, that is just incalculable how powerful that is.
It really is. So your manager at the time making you go on an audition, I'm sure you're like, oh, thank God I listened. Thank God I didn't do.
Oh yeah.
Let me.
Yeah, you will do this.
Yes.
Thank you.
But I want to go. This is a cooler show. Get me in Starsky and Hutch. No. You're going here.
Yeah. It was never a cool show. It was never. I mean, NBC was successful with it, it was by no means their favorite show because they felt like it wasn't hip enough. It wasn't edgy enough. It wasn't any of these things that people coming into network television were trying to do if they were executives, programming executives. It was a throwback to another time. But what it said was that the audience liked those values. The executives may not have been so interested in those values, but the audience was. And
right.
so while no one was really talking about Little House and Executive Suites, other than to say, I can't believe this thing is so successful, all over America, people are talking about it and enjoying it. And, the show had audiences. Of course, this was part of the time. There are 20 million people a week watching this on Wednesday nights or on Monday nights. I mean, it's just the audiences. I mean, no one has those audiences anymore, unless you're watching the Super Bowl one day. No one has those audiences.
No, not at all. I got to ask you, who else auditioned that you beat out for that? Anybody that
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't know?
I tell this story in the book, but so often when you were a young actor, an actor at any age, when you go to meetings, you walked into waiting rooms to read, and you're looking at 6 to 8 people who are essentially some version of you. Everyone sort of looks the same. I went to the Little House meetings. There was never anybody in the waiting room when I went there. And I think this was a very intentional strategy on their part. I think that Michael's casting director, Susan Sukman, never wanted people to feel like they were a cookie cutter selection. Like, there was no way to know coming in the door exactly what Susan had in mind and what she was looking at, because there was no one else to look at. So everyone went in clean, and she may have known very quickly what she was pointing towards, but the actors who came in, and I really don't know how many actors read for it. I love telling the story. The first time I went in, there was a stack of pictures 12 inches high on her desk. The second time I went back, it was 6 inches high. The third time, it was 2 inches high. And the last time I went in to meet with Michael, there were 4 pictures on the desk. So I don't think she met with 800 actors. I don't think she did that. And maybe she was casting a lot of things, and maybe there was the stack, but I distinctly remember the stack of pictures on the table and how it got smaller each time I went back. And I absolutely remember the 4 pictures on the table. Didn't see them. They weren't visible to me. They were upside down. But I knew as I was going along in this process that it was getting closer and closer. And if I could make that first cut go from 12 inches to 6 inches, I was in this game. And casting decisions are made in about 8 seconds. She clearly knew right away that I could be the guy. Maybe it became clearer to her. It obviously did as we went on that maybe I was the guy. And then Michael had to be convinced, because Michael made all the decisions. I never met at that work. No network casting people had any hand in my casting, and it was all Michael and Susan. They made the decision, and that's how it was for everybody that was on the show.
Pretty wild. I mean, there's one, if you go to Wikipedia, there's one famous cast member that was an extra, that huge star. And this is for the viewers out there. You probably know. Do you know who this is?
Sean Penn.
That's right.
Sean Penn was Sean Penn. Yeah, was because his father, Leo, directed. Leo Penn was a wonderful television director. And so, Sean was a kid in the classroom.
That's wild.
And so that was his first thing. Well, the other person that I think of right away, who was certainly more than an extra on the program, but has had an extraordinary career, is Jason Bateman.
Yeah.
Yes. Did his first work on Little House as James, what was the character's last? Well, it became James. It was James and Cassandra, Melissa Francis, who wanted to have a great career at CNN and Fox Business News, were 2, adopted children in the Ingalls family. And he was just incredible. I don't have a strong sense about Melissa at that point, or it was Missy at the time, but Jason, he had something, and you knew he had something just watching him be. He just radiated that this was his world and he was going to own it. And what a career he had. It's just it's an amazing career. Really amazing career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you had big legends like Ray Bolger on there.
Sure they would. You could dry out and get off this drinking binge.
I couldn't. All right. No more booze.
And this Borgnine.
Oh my God.
Come on. The red button.
Well, that was interestingly, the summer that I started, my first so I had never watched the show and I'd never seen a full episode of the show before getting it. And I'm shooting during that summer of 1979 and I'm home with my family. And of course, we're going to watch this on Monday night. And so the reruns were on. And the first episode I saw from start to finish was one of the 2 Ray episodes that Ray Bolger guest starred in. And I can't tell you which one it was. There were 2 that season he did. And I was absolutely blown away by what I was watching on this with the beautiful script and the gorgeous photography and the music and the heart that just like poured out on screen. And I just thought, am I one lucky guy to be invited to be part of this? I was just knocked out by it. And I think, and it was that first viewing, I just knew, oh my God, this is incredible. And here's Ray Bolger, dancing down the road in Walnut Grove with Laura. And I think,
that's great.
Oh my God.
It's another history moment.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
Now, how do you now we have the internet, so for actors out there, they could Google the real person. How did you Google the real character? Here's a picture of you next. How did you capture the real character right here?
Oh, look, I had never read the books coming into this. I didn't know exactly what this was. I asked Michael what I should read. Would he recommend? Obviously he might have said, we'll read the Little House books. And, you'll get a sense of who these people were. He didn't say that. Michael said, the only thing you need to read is what I write. That's it. Just read what I write about this and you're going to be in really good shape. Well, I think I was taken a little aback by that. And I did read some things about pioneer life, but it really was what I read separate from Little House or from what Michael wrote was not really analogous to what we were doing. Michael was doing a very, it was an idealized, beautiful fantasy vision of pioneer life. It didn't resemble real pioneer life, which was, I think, had to have been incredibly challenging to survive in that environment. So, I did focus on what Michael wrote, and that was those were the lessons that were taught. I didn't really learn about the real Almanzo until after the series was over. It wasn't until 2008 that it was confirmed for me that we had been pronouncing the man's name throughout the time on the show. His name should have been pronounced Almanzo. We pronounced it Almanzo. I don't know how we got there. Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know how we got there. It should have been, when looking back on it, hindsight's always 2020, but when that first little scene where Eliza Jane introduces Almanzo to Laura, I'd like you to meet my brother, Almanzo.
Laura, this is my brother, Almanzo.
Nice to meet you. Pleasure to meet you, Laura. My friends call me Manny. Pleasure to meet you, Manly, she says. How we get from Almanzo to my friends call me Manny, if it was Almanzo, my friends call me Manny makes total sense. And pleasure to meet you, Manly is is sort of the slip of the tongue that would have made sense if the name had been pronounced Almanzo. Now, I've talked to fans through the years, and many of them love the fact that they like the sound of Almanzo. But the fact of the matter is, I listened to a CD called Laura Speaks. This was, a CD that was available at the Almanzo and Laura Ingalls Wilder Society in Malone, New York. And this was Almanzo's childhood home. Beautiful place, by the way, if you're on the East Coast and looking for places to see what Laura wrote about Malone or Burke, New York. Almanzo's childhood home is beautiful. But there's this 27-second CD. And at the end of the speech, it was one little speech. It had to have been recorded maybe in the late 40s, something like that.
Farmer Boy was written from facts and stories Almanzo told me. They are all true.
And Laura had this very twangy Midwestern country. It sounded like what you'd expect a country woman to sound like. She talked about man of the house, Almanzo. And that was really the first time, as much as I got lots of letters from fans when I started, you're mispronouncing the name. But I was not walking into Michael Landon's office to say, hey, we're mispronouncing the name. I mean, that just wasn't going to happen. And I think and I'm sure Michael got those letters too. I'm sure the network shared it with him. And he said, I'm sure Michael being Michael, I mean, once he made the decision that this is what it was, that's what it was. It was not going to change. Now it's a great piece of trivia. It's, potato, tomato, tomato, Almanzo. Doesn't matter. It's all the same thing, so, but it was fun. It's fun now to talk about it. It's one of those sort of inexplicable things that I was too blown away just being there. This was not a question I was going to ask. And
that's funny.
Now I'm a committed Almanzo guy. That's what it is. It's Almanzo. And even Melissa Gilbert, who fought back on that, because she would have been told at a certain point after the show was over. But, Michael said it was Almanzo. It was going to be Almanzo. Now, mysteriously, I don't want to say 4 or 5 years ago, Almanzo became Almanzo. So she got the true story from somewhere, and it made sense to her. And okay, now it's just fun conversation.
In the meantime, let me put a good picture of my handsome face and Dean's handsome book with his face. Look at us together. We're like the Abbott and Costello of podcasts right together. Dean Butler, Prairie Man. Get the book, My Little House, Life and Beyond. And if you want to hear all the stories, the book will tell you. Click up here or click in the description down below. I am Stefan, everybody. You guys are beautiful. This is Dean Butler. Pleasure having him on. And everybody, until then, we're Coffee Talk. Stay beautiful. Remember, who loves you, baby? We do. Mwah. Bam. It's coffee time. That's all we have time for today, but make sure you join our members only club, because that's where you'll see this episode unedited. In the meantime, hit that notifications button and subscribe, because there's more clips of Dean coming your way.